just as the Mass of the Americas incorporated some of the classic Mexican folk hymns, you've decided to weave throughout the Mass, in my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, one of Saint Junipero Serra's favorite hymns, and we know what that is. Can you tell us about
that? The hymn is called, it's a vernacular hymn, so it's in Spanish, and it's called Salve Virgen Pura, Hail Pure Virgin. As I thought about this Mass and ways in which I could approach it so that it was somehow reflective of the Saint Junipero specifically, and the Franciscan friars generally, I knew, one, it ought not to be some big splashy production, because that's not at all the Franciscan charism. I wanted it somehow to be characterized by an atmosphere of humility, and so it's small scale. The music is not elaborate or showy. As already mentioned, I wanted it to be in the usus anticior, what we still, I suppose, call the extraordinary form, and therefore all in Latin and of that specific form of the Mass. And then also to, in addition to the hymn, to make allusions to Gregorian chants from the Missa Orbis Factor, which certainly would have been among the more commonly heard Mass ordinaries in those days whenever chant was used. And so I've never had to do as much research before composing in my life as I've had to do for these projects from Archbishop Corleone. He always sets a real challenge for me to know a lot about what I'm doing before I even start. As a result of the research that I did for Mass of the Americas, I came to know the work of Professor Craig Russell, who teaches at Cal State San Luis Obispo, and is really certainly in California and even more broadly, one of the current most authoritative academic sources of information about the music of the mission era. So I went back to Russell's book called From Serra to Sancho, Music and Pageantry in the California Missions, and started reading up more specifically about any allusions to specific pieces of music that would have been made by Saint Junipero. And there's this fascinating discussion in the book about how when they got to the St. Charles Borromeo mission and were doing the dedication, there's a whole description of the music that was sung, left behind in letters by Father Serra, and he mentions, just very tersely, sang the Salve. Well, for years everybody assumed, as is reasonable too, that he was referring to the Salve Regina. But that's a kind of chronological misinterpretation. What I mean by that is that, yes, in the present day, since the revival of chant, and since the publication of missals that everybody has access to, and the widespread availability of Gregorian chants through a variety of sources, a lot of Catholics in the present day know how to sing the Salve Regina, and they know how to sing it in Latin. That was not true in the middle of the 18th century. These materials were not widely available. A great many people would not have had any contact with them ever. Even the great composer of that time, Sancho, one of the Franciscan friars, himself, when there's a manuscript that he left behind of the Salve Regina, and what he's written does not correspond to the traditional Gregorian chant. It's described in Russell's book as looking like it was the effort of somebody trying to recall something that they remembered from a long time ago and getting certain parts of it wrong. So that just sets the context for this statement here that after the dedication of the mission, everybody sang the Salve. Well, in order for everybody to sing it spontaneously just like that, everybody would have to know it. And clearly, even one of the most distinguished musicians of the time had a slightly imperfect memory of it. And that's the music, which is an elaborate, non-repeating melody. And then there's all the Latin. So after scouring the archives at all the different missions for all the hymns and other things that might be related to the word Salve, he came across, he wasn't the first one to do it, but he came across this vernacular hymn, Salve Virgen Pura, which was enormously popular. It was in Spanish, and it would have been just the kind of thing with its simple musical structure and familiar vernacular text that this, as he describes it, hodgepodge of soldiers, friars, and neophyte converts from Baja California might have known by memory. So Russell comes to the conclusion that these references to the Salve in St. Junipero's letters are most likely references to the Salve Virgen Pura. And he cites it constantly, over and over, and it looks like it's, if not his favorite, certainly one of his favorite hymns. And so I decided to base the musical materials of the Mass on that hymn. I can play a little bit of it for you.
Good, because I looked online to try to find a
No,
link.
you won't find it online.
I can't.
You'll just find distortions of it, just like when I was looking for the Ave Maria, the Nahuatl Ave Maria for the Mass of the Americas. So, okay, I hope this works. So could that be heard?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's Salve Virgen Pura. I don't have the words memorized. Da, 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 da. And then the same phrase, almost the same, just in a slightly different key, and brings it to a conclusion. That's it. That's the sum total of the musical material of Salve Virgen Pura. It just repeats through different verses as you continue to sing it. And that's not a lot of musical material to base a Mass on, but I did figure out ways to transform it, reharmonize it, do other transformations of the melody. Things like there's a technique in music called inversion, where you take a melody and you turn it upside down. And you turn it upside down, and other kinds of techniques like that. So between different textures, techniques, harmonizations, where it is in the texture, is it in the soprano, is it in the bass, is it in the instruments, I weave together a Mass ordinary out of the materials drawn from that hymn.
Oh, I have a comment. Salve Virginia Pura. Sounds like we need it published. Many Hispanic congregations will embrace it with gladness. So,
it would be nice if there, and maybe there's a published version of it out there. I'm not aware of one, and believe me, I looked. The original manuscript is at the Santa Barbara Mission. I did find that out thanks to another source that I consulted for research. Can you all see that?
yeah, Mission Music of California.
This utterly charming book, which, as much as anything else, resembles a very high quality textbook that might have been distributed in schools. But this is actually the first printed, published example of the actual mission music manuscripts as they were being rediscovered in the missions.
Wow.
They were sitting in the missions all those years, just in a cupboard somewhere, or on display as just sort of a historical curiosity. Oh, look at that funny paper, look at that funny writing. And then as they started, as the Franciscan friars started doing a more deliberate cataloging of what all these things were, they realized there was this enormously rich treasury of music unique to the missions that had been created at the missions by the friars themselves, and which reflected the influence of elements drawn from the indigenous cultures where they were evangelizing.